iPhone 14 Pro Max has been on the market for nearly 9 months already, and I have the space black color, while the iPhone 13 Pro Max was one of the best iPhones I think ever created. And the only reason why it's not for sale anymore is because of the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Now, this is the graphite colorway, but in this episode, I want to see how does the speed, you can see the cameras are a little bit different size, how does the speed compare with iOS 16.5 versus 13 Pro Max on iOS 16.5. And the reason why I'm making this episode, let's begin with the boot up in 3, 2, go, is because I want to see, how fast they compare at this point. I still think the iPhone 13 Pro Max is a great recommendation right now. I found these phones on eBay for around $700 right now. So you can get a 13 Pro Max cheaper than an iPhone 14 in some cases, and look how much screen you're getting by comparison. So you've seen that boot up was nearly identical. The only thing that really differentiates these on the front is the dynamic island and the notch. So not a major difference, just dynamic island and the notch. Okay, so to go ahead and confirm the software, you're gonna see iOS 16.5 on the 14 Pro Max, and over here iOS 16.5 on the 13 Pro Max. You can see both clocked at 3 gigahertz, but one is a little bit higher on the A16 Bionic and the A15 Bionic on the right, a little bit lower, both with the same RAM. Now, 17 is out in beta form. It's not official software just yet, but let's go ahead and begin with the unlock speed here. So you'll see Dynamic Island does show a little bit of a difference. Gives it a nice little updated look and feel when you go ahead and look at the Dynamic Island, but nothing too out of the ordinary. Let's go over here to the iPhone 13 Pro Max, and you could see just about the same. So we're going to see essentially no differences in the unlocking times. So basically these phones unlock at the same exact time, and we don't have any differences with no fingerprint scanners on either of them. So unlocking boot up so far, exactly the same. Now, when it comes to generally scrolling through, both of them actually have the same ProMotion display, 120 hertz panel on here. So when you are scrolling through, everything looks identical on both phones. There is not a single difference here. And why is this important to mention? Because we're here in mid 2023. And if you have been thinking iPhones are too pricey for a while, or you just want to get an iPhone, a big iPhone with really modern specs, at a cheaper price point, 13 Pro Max is a steal right now. It doesn't get a lot of coverage anymore because it's not the latest and greatest trend. But this phone is still an incredible offering, and it's one I highly still recommend. You can see generally just scrolling through the operating system, no major differences whatsoever. All right, so we've arrived at the application test. You could see everything closed out on both. Let's begin with calendar. You could see identical. I do have True Tone on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Let me go ahead and turn that off. Let's go into calculator. Identical. Let's go into clock. Identical once again. Identical there. Identical there. There and there. Let's go into weather. These are the same phones. We could just end the video right now. These are basically the same phones. No, I'm just kidding. Let's go into, they are pretty much the same phones though. It's almost like, I feel like Apple could have just skipped this phone, honestly. Without the dynamic island, I mean, it just seems like it was just another phone to launch. Really, it does. When I compare it to iPhone 13 Pro Max, it's just like, did they even need to launch that? They could have pulled one of those iPad moves where they don't launch an iPad Pro every year. I feel like with the 14 Pro Max, they just had to have something out, I feel like, because honestly, even the camera, there is some nice upgrades to the camera on the 14 Pro Max, like action mode, a little bit more bokeh in the background, but I just kind of like the easy to use 13 Pro Max camera. You'll see not even an inch of a difference here so far. And you could see Groupon. So besides doing my tech channel where I cover the latest and greatest phones a lot of the times, I would say that, the iPhone 13 Pro Max, I would have just easily kept this if it wasn't for that. So let's go into Amazon now and see how they perform. You'll see the iPhone 14 Pro Max a little faster there. Let's go into Starbucks. And that was the iPhone 13 Pro Max. If you have the 13 Pro Max, I would seriously keep that phone for probably the next, I'm going to say 3 years. Unless you just have to have the latest and greatest, I totally would just keep it. The 13 Pro Max was a little better on that one. And Apple just launched a 15-inch MacBook Air M2. I haven't decided if I'm going to cover it here. I don't really cover MacBooks too much on the channel. You can see eBay there on the right. And we'll go into Dead Trigger 2. And you'll see Dead Trigger 2 faster on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. This is the area where it might be just a little bit better. I'm not going to say tons and tons better, but definitely a little bit better. And that's going to be the 14 Pro Max. Let's go into Asphalt 9 and see how we perform here. And you should find that Asphalt 9 was about the same. Wow. Literally about the same. So if you're looking for basically an identical phone and you can save yourself hundreds of dollars, seriously guys, go bargain hunting for the 13 Pro Max. You're going to be very happy with that decision. Honestly, if I never bought the 14 Pro Max, I wouldn't be really caring too much. I mean, honestly, I bought it because I need to review it for the channel, and I love to, take a look at it next to the latest and greatest phones on the market. But other than that, I totally just would have kept my iPhone 13 Pro Max and just rocked out with that. So we are downloading resources here. I'll be back when they get more into the actual game. So the iPhone 13 Pro Max did this faster, but we had to download different, well, it looks like we're using the same account. We had to download different resources on each. So definitely the iPhone 13 Pro Max was faster, but that's only because we were downloading different resources. But honestly, it's about the same. We'll go into Subway Surfers, and you'll see Subway Surfers faster there on the left. I do think in this area of gaming, I do think the iPhone 14 Pro Max will give you a bump in performance, a small bump. It's not one you're going to notice or even care about because honestly, the 13 Pro Max, I never even thought about performance. It was so fast. And that's why you can still see the A15 Bionic chipset in phones like the 14 Plus and the 14. But honestly, I got to say that, with the gaming, not only are you getting basically the same displays, you're also getting the same promotion, the same similar brightness. I mean, 14 Pro Max a little brighter. Dynamic island could potentially be a distraction, but as is the notch. Depends on which distraction bothers you more. We'll go into speed test, or if either even bothers, maybe neither bothers you. Let's go into 3D Mark. I thought I was going to see something different. I literally see zero difference. Like, not even a single difference in this whole video. That's insane. We'll go into iMovie, and we'll do the camera in a little bit. So, main speed test, even. Zero difference in day-to-day applications. Gaming, maybe a small, a little pinch better on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, but really it's not much to speak of. All right, so before we get into the RAM management, let's check the heat. There's some warmth right here. And then over here, we do have a little bit of warmth there. So I would say heat-wise, about the same. Running all those applications definitely does warm up the phone, but there's not a big difference. We'll go into 3D Mark, speed test, Geekbench 6, Temple Run 2, and again, iOS with its basically perfect animations. We'll go into Asphalt 9, both of them doing the same thing here. Let's go into Dead Trigger, set up out of there, eBay. We'll go into Best Buy and Starbucks, Amazon, Groupon, Twitter, Freeform, App Store, Instagram, Weather, Clock, Calculator, Calendar. So identical in the RAM management. I mean, same phones. Once again, same performance. Now let's see, will you miss a moment on either? Absolutely not in the camera, but which one is going to be faster to do this? Camera. iPhone 14 Pro Max, slower to open the camera. Let's do this again. 3, 2, go. Yep, I want to be biased here and give it to the 14 Pro Max, but I just can't. The 13 Pro Max looks a little snappier on that as well. Now, both of them do have macro modes, 3x, but the iPhone 14 Pro Max adds the action mode and video up there in the top left-hand corner, and it does add the 2x right there as well. So yeah, the camera looks a little faster on the iPhone 13 Pro Max. In terms of shutter speed, that's about the same, but in terms of launch speed, it looked like the 13 Pro Max was a little bit quicker than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. So far in this video, I'm feeling like I bought the same phone twice. Let me go ahead and hit CPU benchmark, and I'll be back when they are done. All right, well, here's some clear proof the 14 Pro Max is faster. It just won out on the speed of finishing the Geekbench 6 test, and wow, 64. 26 on that multi-core score versus 5634 on the 13 Pro Max. Now look at that single core, 2288, 2532. So that would prove in our app test, CPU opening these applications, it's just a hair better. So yeah, definitely faster on the 14 Pro Max for that test. We're gonna go ahead and run Wildlife Extreme to get down to the bottom of these frame rates and which one can do better in this test for checking out gaming and stuff like that. This should tell us a little bit about that. And wrapping it up here, you'll see the iPhone 14 Pro Max with a 2956, and then over here we do have ourselves a 2553 on the Wildlife Extreme. Now if you take a look at the average frame rates, we are checking out a 17.7 FPS, over here a 15.3. And so with that being said, it's only a little bit better on the iPhone 14 Pro Max for graphics and stuff like that. You can see it scores better than 75% of devices, which means it's not the fastest out there according to this test, and 66% better on the 13 Pro Max. So in the long haul, of course, the 13 Pro Max is going to be slightly behind. It's always a year older phone is going to be a little bit behind. But when you check the specs and you check, the prices, I feel like for an extra $400 less or even $300 less, the 13 Pro Max is a really good pickup even now. And as the 15 Pro Max comes out, unless that's just mind-blowingly different, it's still going to be a good pickup because the 13 Pro Max really brought the heat. And I think it was like peak iPhone right here because, take a look at the 14 Pro Max. And I can say that every year, and then Apple's always going to bring out something fresh and modern. That's the case always. But honestly, between these two, if you're looking to save a buck or two, not even a buck or two, a couple $100, I still recommend the 13 Pro Max here in mid 2023. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more content like this. I'll catch you on the next one. Nick here. Be sure to be well, and peace.